and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things and strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings, strings, strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
strings and things.
From the moment I saw you, the last of the litter, I knew you were the one, and we'd soon hear the pitter-patter of tiny paws on our kitchen floor and tiny scratches on the bedroom door. You might sometimes be mischievous, sometimes be shy, but I know I found love in those kitten cat eyes. Join the free VIP Kitten Club from Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shop in store. Visit petsathome.com/kitten club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
Make sure you're uni ready with our huge range of practical essentials and home from home comforts and get 10% off for a limited time. T's and C's and exclusions apply. Dunelm, the home of home.
Welcome back to Street Signs. I'm Juliana Tattlebaum.
And I'm Jemima Bersecci, and these are your headlines.
European stocks jump as conservative rebels put the opposition one step closer to scuppering a no-deal Brexit, easing fears of a cliff-edge divorce from the EU.
The FTSE MIB outperforms while Italian banks jump to a one-month high after five-star party members back a new coalition with the PD.
Luxury stocks leap alongside the Hang Seng on reports Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam will formally withdraw the extradition bill that sparked anti-government protests 14 weeks ago.
In an exclusive interview, the Prime Minister of Lebanon, Saad Hariri, tells CNBC how he's trying to fix his country's struggling economy and says he fears tensions over Iran could spark an all-out conflict.
The only thing about all of this that scares me is a war.
How close are we to that?
I don't know. And I don't think anybody wants a war.
Is it a possibility?
It's a possibility like any other possibility.
Well, half an hour ago, we had the European PMI numbers come out. We've just got now the UK services PMI numbers. So let me just break them down to you. The August services PMI for the UK has fallen to 50.6 versus an expected number of 51, so lower than expectations. And this is also lower than the July number of 51.4. Now, anyone who is watching this show just now, we were talking about the strength of the services PMI in the UK relative to manufacturing and the construction PMI numbers, which have come out this week on the weaker side. And this indeed does show that these services PMI numbers are beginning to level off. Still crucially above the 50 mark, but just a little bit at 50.6. So yes, UK services have been holding up the UK economy, but we're beginning to see somewhat of a moderation. There's certainly something to watch out for. But of course, the focus of the pound has been on political developments over the last 24 hours. We have seen a bounce from sub 120 to 121.40 now. Juliana can give us some more detail.
Thanks very much, Imana. Well, let's get right to the pound here versus the dollar, currently trading back above the 120 mark at 121.40. So that's about half a percentage point higher today. Yesterday, a lot of volatility in the pound. Initially, we saw sterling sink to a 3-year low, dropping below that 120 mark very early on. But then it recovered some of those losses after Boris Johnson lost that working majority in Parliament and then proceeded to gain throughout the day. And that has continued today as the market seems to see the risk of no deal come October 31st as diminishing, given the developments in Parliament over the last 24 hours or so. But of course, all eyes on Westminster today. And the euro, meanwhile, yesterday also hit a low versus the dollar, the lowest level since May 2017. And now today we're seeing a recovery there of about 0.15 at 1.099. Let's take a look at equities and see what all this means for equity markets here in Europe. We're looking at green across the board for European markets. In particular, the FTSE MIB up about 1.5%. Now, it's easy to forget that the political situation has been very uncertain, and the saga unraveling in Italy this week, given how much focus we've got at Westminster. But yesterday, a key development where we saw five-star members approve the coalition between Five Star and PD. So that coalition government is going to go ahead, and Italian markets like what they see. In Germany, the DAX up 1.2%, and within that, auto is performing quite well, right alongside luxury in broader Europe. Finally, let's take a look at U.S. futures. Yesterday, we got the first real data point for the autumn, and it was weak. It was the manufacturing ISM, which dropped into contractionary territory. We saw U.S. stocks fall on the back of that, but it looks like today we're going to see a bounce back. In particular, looking at the Dow, we're looking at a more than 200-point rally at the open. Jemana.
All right, thanks, Juliana. And of course, Brexit has been on everyone's minds. French government ministers have met with business leaders to discuss preparations for a cliff-edge Brexit. France's Minister for European Affairs was not positive about the prospects of a deal, but did say, quote, "My only message is that there will be a future relationship, and it's very important that we consider that Brexit is not the end of history." A very important reminder. Charlotte Reeds, our French correspondent, is back on the set. It's great to have you with us, Charlotte. So tell us about what the French have been doing in terms of these no-deal Brexit preparations.
So you saw the meeting yesterday was at the finance ministry with 3 ministers and junior ministers, as you saw in the pictures. And they were gathering some representatives of companies and mainly SMEs, because the French government is getting more and more concerned that they're not ready for a hard Brexit. And so they've been trying to tell them, what they're saying is difficult to have the CEOs of these small companies who have been told several times, get ready for Brexit, and the threat hasn't materialized. And now they're saying, as it's getting closer, they really need to get ready. So they've been showing them new system, new customs and things like that. And as part of a wider exercise that the French government has been putting into place over the past 6 months, in January, the Prime Minister announced a €50 million fund to improve ports and airport infrastructure. They're also hiring about 600 custom officers and veterinaries to be at the borders. On Friday last week, you had Michael Gove in Calais meeting one of the French ministers to show how Calais, the port of Calais, which is an important port of entry, of transit to the UK, was getting ready. So it's preparations because the French government is concerned about the impact of a hard Brexit. And it's also a little way to show to the British government that, come what may, we are ready for a hard Brexit. So in the negotiations, also a hand to show, you know what, we're ready.
Which brings us to the next question, of course, which is how likely is that hard Brexit? Let's bring in Richard Miles, political analyst from Absolute Strategy Research. Richard, it's great to have you with us as well. So huge developments within Parliament in the last 24 hours, and clearly the intention is there to stop a no-deal Brexit from occurring. Is there still a chance that the UK could still end up in that no-deal Brexit situation?
There certainly is. Yesterday was the day that sort of Brexit finally broke the Tory party. I think, trying to push through a no-deal Brexit against this Parliament, where there was a big sort of Remain majority, was always going to be a tough ask. And I think, the expulsion of 21 MPs, including, the grandson of Winston Churchill, Philip Hammond, who was the Chancellor, the Tory Chancellor, the second most powerful politician in the Tory party until 6 weeks ago, is now out of the party. This was a catastrophic day for the Tory party. But the only chance to rebuild is to have an election, change Parliament, and sort of purge the Tories of those sort of Remain rebels. If Boris Johnson is successful in that, I think we are going to have an election fairly soon. A no-deal Brexit is completely back on the table.
But it's not Boris Johnson's decision, is it? According to the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, they've got to get 2/3 approval from the Parliament. And we've heard from Jeremy Corbyn saying, I'm not going to allow a snap election to happen until you completely rule out no-deal Brexit on October 31st. So then the ball is obviously back in Boris Johnson's court. He can choose to ignore that and still try and go ahead and put forward the motion, get shot down, or wait until after October 31st has passed, in which case, by this bill that was passed yesterday, they would have to have gone for an extension anyway.
Yeah, so the sequencing is, I guess, the issue here. So, but I think the one sort of overarching point is to remember that no Parliament can bind the hands of a future Parliament. So what we're going to see in the next few days and weeks, either next week or so, is Parliament, which has this big Remain anti-No Deal majority, is going to assert itself. It's probably going to pass this legislation. It's going to be resisted in the House of Lords. They're going to try and filibuster it. But I think those efforts are unlikely to be successful. So this Parliament will try to shut down the chances of no deal. But we've just seen the governing party lose its majority. That in normal times would lead us straight into an election. Now, we're not going to go into an election straight away because they're going to try and pass this legislation. But if and when that election happens, if Boris Johnson wins that election, stacks Parliament with pro-Eurosceptic, pro-no deal MPs, and wins a mandate for that no deal Brexit, he will try to renegotiate. I don't think there's any likelihood of that being successful. So that future Parliament will essentially just countermand whatever this Parliament does in the next week or so.
So it doesn't necessarily rule out no-deal Brexit on October 31st. Now, I want to come back to your point about the Tory party and the implications of yesterday's events for the future of the Conservatives. I mean, what does this mean for this party going forward?
Well, I mean, you've seen this sort of purge of moderates in this party. I think we're potentially going to see more extreme behaviour from this government over the next few weeks, and there's possibilities that if this legislation goes through, that the government could try to deny royal assent to the bill. That's a sort of use of a royal veto. It hasn't been used since 1708. These are sort of very extreme measures. And I think what we're seeing is a remoulding of the Conservative Party, along sort of Eurosceptic, quite extremist lines. And the bottom line here is that for investors going forward, this uncertainty is not going away. Investors are assailed on all sides in the UK by ideological extremists, and the Tory party in the form of these hard Eurosceptics who have captured the party, with Boris Johnson, Dominic Cummings leading that faction, and Labour in the form of the hard left leadership under Jeremy Corbyn, and also in Scotland with the SNP who want Scottish independence. So this sort of ideological extremism, all of these parties are having their moment in the sun at the same time, and so it's a difficult market for investors, and for us, the UK still looks sort of uninvestable right now.
Now, we heard from Liam Fox yesterday. He was citing a French politician and the warning from him that you must leave after your referendum because the drift to extremism in France came after the referendum on the EU constitution, which was ignored. What do you think about that argument and how it applies to the UK?
Yeah, and I agree with that in the sense that referendums which reduce an inherently complex issue, and couldn't be nothing more complex than EU membership. It covers so many areas. So trying to reduce that down to a binary question was always going to be a very divisive way of settling that issue. But I think we're already there. We've already got the rise of the Brexit Party under Nigel Farage. We've also already got the sort of extremist sort of lurch to the Eurosceptic right under the Tory Party. So in some ways we're kind of already there. And I think and the problem we have that the UK has is an election is not going to solve anything, and a referendum, may not resolve it either. So if we have an election and Boris Johnson wins it, we go for no deal. I mean, no one really thinks that that's the end of the story. That just restarts negotiations with the EU for what the future relationship will be. If Jeremy Corbyn wins that election, well, then we have a referendum. That takes 6 months to organise, and we don't know, with an uncertain result. We don't even know what the question would be. And then after that, does Corbyn sort of go with a sort of left wing, a very hard left wing agenda? Right. Do we get an independence referendum in Scotland? This uncertainty is going to trundle on and on and on in the UK.
Exactly, and that's I was expressing my surprise earlier at how much sterling pound has actually bounced in the last 24 hours, given the uncertainty. Richard, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much. Richard Miles, a political analyst from Absolute Strategy Research, and our French correspondent Charlotte Reed as well, who joins us back on set. And of course, we're going to be discussing the French angle a lot over the next couple of months too. Okay, I want to take you to some live videos, live footage. Actually, Christine Lagarde, the nominated president of the European Central Bank, is in Brussels to face questions from European lawmakers ahead of a plenary vote on her candidacy today. Now, while the vote isn't binding, the session will be Lagarde's first major public test and could provide clues on how she will run the central bank. So we'll keep an eye there on any interesting flashes Nice neck scarf, gotta say.
I suppose now we'll be guessing the color of Madame Lagarde's neck scarf.
Exactly.
Rather than the ties. That's a nice change of pace. Well, let's get into some corporate news this morning. It's not just about the politics here in Europe. Thales says organic sales growth for the year will be at the lower end of its previous guidance of 3 to 4%. The French defense electronics firm said clients in the commercial satellite space were keeping a, quote, wait-and-see attitude as they wait for new technological innovations.
And Delivery Hero says it expects full-year revenues to reach to the top of its guidance range of 1.3 to 1.4 billion euros. The German's goods delivery company posted a 98% surge in first-half revenues, which it says will help it finally break even in the second half of this year.
The French defense electronics firm said Lebanon's prime minister backs his government over Hezbollah. Or our exclusive interview with Saad Hariri coming up after the break.
And Delivery Hero says it expects full-year revenues to reach to the top of its guidance range of 1.3 to 1.4 billion euros. The German delivery company posted a 98%
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores, booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions. At Tesco,
found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What got us standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection, and USB connection.
Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa, or Mocha X Plus, and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. Change of that wheel would take me much longer, especially the chains off the ground. Makes it harder to cut.
This one doesn't even have a lock on the front.
So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, change the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply. People who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it. It matters that you want to. We'll find a way for you.
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, jollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
I didn't choose you. You chose me. When you broke from the crowd and called at my name, soon you'll be feeling right at home. You'll be a bit unsure, but you're free to roam. What's good to choose? What's nice to nibble? Wet food, dry food, kibble. Life sometimes be cheeky, not always wise, but I know I found love in those puppy dog eyes. Join the free VIP Puppy Club and Pets at Home for advice and exclusive offers, including 10% off your first shopping store. Visit petsathome.com/puppy club or join in store. T's and C's apply.
We've got some breaking news for you in just the last few minutes. Cathay Pacific Airways Chairman John Slosar has resigned. His replacement has been named as Patrick Healy. Just the latest executive to step down after the CEO resigned amid the Hong Kong protests. And on that note, CNBC sources have confirmed Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam has called an urgent meeting this afternoon with the city's pro-establishment camp. That's after several local media reports suggested Lam is set to formally withdraw the controversial extradition bill that sparked these pro-democracy demonstrations. The complete withdrawal of the bill is a key demand of the protest movement. The Hang Seng has closed almost 4% higher, and here in Europe, we are seeing a rally across a luxury. You can see a 3 to 4% gains for Richemont, Burberry, Kering, LVMH, all reacting very positively to this potential announcement from Carrie Lam.
Well, Lebanon could face another credit downgrade and a potential test of its currency peg if a decline of the country's foreign exchange reserves accelerates. That is according to S&P Global. Hadi is in Beirut and sat down with the Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri yesterday. And Hadi, look, this is coming at a very crucial time for the economy. Debt to GDP of 150%, double-digit deficit. The economy is only growing at 1%. How are they going to turn the economy around?
That's an excellent question, Jemana, and one that I put to the Prime Minister several different ways over an hour-long interview last night. One of the things I did ask him, this 6-month grace period that you're getting from S&P to turn this all around so you don't have another triple C rating, how quickly can you move on this? It all is about, as you very well know, about its political stability, the political will, the courage to push forward with these reforms. And he told me, listen, I do expect protests in the street because this haircut that we're going to have to give the Lebanese is going to be one that's going to be pretty tough to take. But he said, I do feel that at this point, at least, we do have the political will to move forward. Now, as you know, this is a story that doesn't exist in a vacuum. We can't talk about crumbling infrastructure, lack of investment from the private sector, as well as systemic corruption, without also talking about how the geopolitics play into whether or not somebody wants to invest in this country. Listen in to what he had to say about what we saw happening here over the weekend between Hezbollah and Israel.
Hezbollah is not a Lebanese problem only. It's a regional problem. Israel wants to have, this scenario, Lebanon is responsible, blah, 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 what Netanyahu says, and you want to buy it, go ahead, buy it. But he knows, and the international community knows, that this is not true. We do not agree with Hezbollah on these actions. I do not agree with Hezbollah on these actions.
But can you stop
But at the same time, I am a pragmatic person, and I know my limits, and I know the limits of this region. If people were serious about this issue, they would have done things 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Now, maybe they to do something. It's not my problem that Hezbollah became this strong. It's not my fault that Hezbollah became this strong. But to tell me that Hezbollah is running the government, no, Hezbollah is not running the government. Sorry. We are running the government. I am running the government. President Aoun is running the government with me as president. Nabih Berri as Speaker of the House. They're a political party. They have their size in the government, and they have their size in the parliament. They do not run the country. But what they control is maybe a flare or a war that might happen for regional reasons that we have no say in it in Lebanon. And this is the big quarrel between us and them. And this is where I tell you, my logic is, what do I do as a Prime Minister? Do I sit and fight Hezbollah day and night on this issue? Or do I make all the reforms that are needed for the country, strengthen my institutions, strengthen my LAF, my ISF, my central bank, all my security forces, make a government, strong central government, and then also at the same time the President has decided to open a strategic dialogue for how to defend Lebanon from any intrusion or wars. And we sit on the table and discuss things calmly. This is an issue that will take time. People will say, oh, wallah, this dialogue will not lead to anything. Maybe. In the beginning, it will not lead to anything. But I will assure you, in the end, it will lead to something.
Now, I don't know what you guys took away from that, but it seemed to me as if this is yet another Mideast leader who seems to be abdicating responsibility for the things that are happening in his country. But at the same point, I did push him yet again on the economy again and again. He told me that he's going to tackle corruption. He says he's going to put a lot of people in jail. He says there's going to be 60 to 70% less corruption in this country in the next 2 years or so. Also talking to me about crumbling infrastructure, about taking on those $11 billion in loans from the Cedar conference that we saw a couple of months ago. He says the country is ready to step up, take that money, put that money to work. A few bright spots in the conversation, but certainly, when I asked him the big question, which is, who's to blame here? If we're going to blame somebody, who's to blame? I said, are the Lebanese their own worst enemy? And he said, of course. Guys, back to you.
Adelaide, thank you very much for that extensive interview. Well, switching gears, let's get an update on where things stand with Hurricane Dorian. It's edging towards Florida after pummeling the Bahamas, causing widespread destruction. NBC's Jay Gray is in Savannah, Georgia with more. Jay, give us the latest.
Hey, Juliana. Yeah, those pictures from the Bahamas just overwhelming when you see the amount of devastation. This storm just sitting there for almost 2 days and lashing the island nation. So our thoughts are with them as this storm does now begin to move toward the U.S. coast. And it's interesting to see what's happening with the storm. It's lost a little bit of its intensity, but it's spreading out. And so that's going to bring conditions into areas that may have not originally been on this track of the storm. Florida starting to feel some of that with heavy seas. They're seeing rain and a coastal surge in some areas. What we expect is that this storm's going to continue to mirror the coastline, and a lot of communities from Florida really through Virginia are going to feel hurricane-force winds, see that rain and coastal surge. Beach erosion is going to be a problem in some of these communities. If it does make landfall at some point, the most likely scenario right now is late this week in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So millions still watching this storm, trying to determine exactly where and when it's going to go.
Jay, thank you very much for bringing us the latest, and as ever, stay safe. All right, I want to take you to some live shots of Christine Lagarde, the nominated president of the European Central Bank, who is addressing European lawmakers ahead of a plenary vote on her candidacy. And we were just saying earlier that it is not a binding vote, but we will be watching out for any particular flashes or comments she may say that will give clues on what type of leadership Christine Lagarde will bring to the ECB. So far, one line that I do want to bring you is she said that highly accommodative policy is warranted for a prolonged period, but, and this is crucial, must be mindful of negative effects of unconventional policies. A really interesting time coming up for the ECB, Juliana. We've got that September 12th meeting. As we were discussing with Kit Jukes, the market is anticipating a bazooka. We've got to see what form that bazooka will take, but interesting as well that Christine Lagarde, who was the incoming ECB president, talking about some of the negative effects of unconventional policies.
And just on the back of the comments we heard earlier in the show from Deutsche Bank CEO Christian Saving, who's giving that speech at the Handelsblatt Summit, that looser ECB monetary policy may have serious side effects. So something that the European banking sector, Germany, of course, in particular, is keeping a very close eye on.
And I think what's interesting is the catalyst for all of this dovishness coming out of the ECB is the data. At the end of the day, the data has been very, very disappointing, and we've seen euro react on the back of that. It's dropped. The composite numbers this morning showed a slight improvement from July. Not many people are talking about the fact that perhaps July may have been the bottom of European data, but of course it all depends on some of the larger one-off risks like a no-deal Brexit, like potential tariffs out of the US as well. So lots of challenges still ahead for the European economy, and certainly a big one for Ms. Lagarde as she takes on that role in the next few months. All right, before we head out, I just want to take you to US futures. We've got all three of the majors seen opening up in the green today, so changing the mood from yesterday when they closed in the red. We've got Dow seen up 230 points, S&P up 25, and that is, of course, after a positive start to European equities as well today. And that is it for our show. I'm Jemana Versace.
And I'm Juliana Tattlebaum. Worldwide Exchange is coming up next.
Fun fact, 1 in 4 of us millennials have debt we might die with.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. with the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strength and things. Strings and things and strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and things. Strings and
Now there's a whole range of strings and things called strings and things, including cheese strings, yollies, and new cheese shapes. Find them all in the cheese and yogurt aisle.
Strings and things.
Hello, James from Park News Agents here. The talk of the shop is that this Wednesday, the Lotto jackpot must be won. Well, I knew those trumpet lessons would come in handy. Don't miss it!
Lotto from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
The S in Audi S-Line stands for many things, like sporty, stealthy, and stylish. But there's just one more to add. A spin. Take one. In the Audi A6 Avant S-Line, it's the only way to find out that it feels as sporty to drive as it looks. The Audi A6 Avant S-Line, from just £419 per month. Initial rental £2,514. Test drive yours at West London Audi, or search Audi S-Line. Audi. Vorsprung durch Technik. 4-year contract hire agreement and 10,000 miles per annum. 18s and over, subject to status. Damage charges may apply. Order by 30th of September 2019. No ownership. Finance providers may pay us as a broker for introducing you. Audi Finance. Visit audi.co.uk.
What's going on, peoples of London? If you always get same boring meal deal, or your mouth water when microwave go ping, then you commit crimes against cooking. So thank goodness for Meerkat Meals. Dine out with 2-for-1 on food at your local favorites, like Chicago Rib Shack Wandsworth and Frankie and Benny's. All with the Meerkat app when you buy, so compare the market. Ooh, lunch is ready. I'll get my coat.
Qualifying purchase 2-for-1 on equivalent starters, mains and desserts, a la carte only, Sunday to Thursday. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
5 at 5, breaking news also out of Hong Kong. The city's government reportedly looking to officially withdraw that controversial extradition bill. Stocks there are soaring. We will take you live to Hong Kong in a moment. Meantime, the UK drama heating up as rivals of Prime Minister Boris Johnson look to force a vote to block any no-deal Brexit. We have the latest in the British saga. Investors bracing for some Wednesday whiplash. Stock futures pointing to triple-digit gains at the open after what was a terrible Tuesday for equities. The gun control debate now hitting corporate America as a number of retailers step forward to take a harder look on sales and safety. And an epic upset in Queens as Roger Federer is going home early from the U.S. Open. It is Wednesday, September 4th, and Worldwide Exchange begins right now. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome from wherever in the world that you may be watching. I am Brian Sullivan. Thanks for joining us. We're going to get to all that we just referenced in a moment. But first, so some new video coming in overnight from the Bahamas, and it is difficult to watch. These are some of the first scenes from Hurricane Dorian. You can see the storm really leaving a trail of destruction, unlike anything maybe anybody has seen in a long time, if ever. Nearly every structure on many of the islands, including Great Abaco, is either gone or severely damaged, with new concerns over the availability of drinking water, food, and the basic needs of the people who live there. Dorian is still a major, dangerous storm. It is now heading in its slow-moving crawl to the Florida coast, and thousands of Americans will evacuate. We're going to have much more on Dorian throughout the morning. There is its current path. All right, right now, though, let's get back down to the markets and what we do here on CNBC and stock futures. Wow, what a turnaround from yesterday. Literally, stock futures indicating we're to gain back pretty much all of what we lost yesterday. All that concern about ISM manufacturing index falling below 50, whatever it is. Guess what? We are seeing futures up 230 right now. The Hong Kong news we'll get to in a moment, helping to power futures higher. And the early trade in Europe as well, we are seeing a similar story. Gains across the board. Germany, France, and Italy all up more than 1%. In the bond market, the benchmark 10-year yield continues to remain depressed. We're at 1.48%. The 2-year note yield at 1.46%. Note, it is lower than the 10-year note. Something to watch there. We are both, though, coming off multi-year lows on both of those yields. All right, let's now get right to that breaking news out of China. Reports this morning that Hong Kong Chief Executive Carrie Lam is set to announce the formal withdrawal of that controversial extradition bill as soon as today. The news sending stocks in Hong Kong soaring. The Hang Seng Index right now is up nearly 4%. Wow, what a move there for Hong Kong. And NBC's Chris Livesay is still on the ground there in Hong Kong, and he has now the news and the reaction to it. Chris.
That's right, Brian. Now, we can confirm that Carrie Lam, the embattled leader of Hong Kong, has just moments ago entered into a meeting with lawmakers, reportedly, that's something we have not confirmed, reportedly to discuss possibly withdrawing that extremely controversial extradition bill. That's the same bill that sparked these months of protests in which we've seen at times up to 2 million people, according to local reports, marching out on the streets demanding that it be withdrawn. Now, Carrie Lam has been extremely reluctant to do that. However, if these reports are confirmed, that might change the game. It's uncertain, however, if it will be enough to keep protesters from turning out to the streets because they've got other demands as well. They want Carrie Lam to resign. They want people who have been arrested, more than 1,000 protesters throughout this movement, to be given an amnesty. And we've seen a lot of alleged police brutality as well. That's another thing that protesters want to have investigated. Just over the weekend, we saw pitched battles between police and protesters, protesters who were violent themselves, throwing bricks and Molotov cocktails, but then police who responded with a water cannon, and at times things got very ugly. They even chased a group of protesters down into the subway and beat them with their clubs and hit them with pepper spray. And according to Amnesty International, some of those people were innocent bystanders. So now the big question is, will this be enough to mollify protesters and keep them from going to the streets? Brian?
Chris Livesay live in Hong Kong with a major story that has stocks there soaring. Chris, thank you very much. Your other major global story happening right now, Boris Johnson gambling and apparently losing, at least for now. His push for a hard Brexit has cost him the vote and possibly his leadership after a key Conservative Party member abandoned his party and instead sided with Liberal Democrats. That means the British Prime Minister loses his majority. It is still an evolving story. And Willem Marx joining us now live from London with more. Willem.
Brian, let me try and explain what happened last night. Essentially, Parliament took control of its own schedule for today. That was important because it's only a very small window before Parliament is suspended on Boris Johnson's orders next week. And what they're trying to do as of today is introduce fresh legislation that will block Prime Minister Johnson's ideal negotiating threat to the EU, and that's the threat of a no-deal Brexit, something that a lot of members of Parliament say would be economically damaging. And if they manage to do that today and over the next couple of days before they're suspended, that will be critical. Boris Johnson has responded saying he would like to see an election, but because he's lost that majority, like you just mentioned, it makes it very different for him unilaterally to demand a fresh general election. And what the opponents inside the House of Commons last night and this morning have been saying is they will only allow a fresh election if this legislation blocking no deal goes through first. That's something, of course, market participants very closely watching because they are concerned about that economic fallout from a no-deal Brexit, and that be one of the reasons why, of course, we've seen the pound strengthen very slightly since the vote yesterday.
Willem, obviously the world of British politics is a little bit confusing, obviously very different than what we have here. Is there any possibility with this tactic that Boris Johnson could serve a couple of months as prime minister and then be replaced? Is there any chance that he would then be forced out and we could have yet another prime minister in the UK, or is that not possible at all?
No, it's entirely possible, Ryan. What he's saying is he would like to see an election to resolve this situation. He doesn't think it can go on as is because he's lost this ability to negotiate with the EU with this tactic. He hoped to have the idea of a no-deal Brexit essentially as a threat to force them to make concessions. Now, if he's to stay as Prime Minister, it would require him, of course, winning an election. And this is where the complication is even greater because, of course, the 33% of British voters current polls show would go for the Conservative Party is not nearly enough to form a majority, even with this relatively new insurgent party. The Brexit Party, a one-issue political movement, as you might gather from the name, even if they combine with the Conservatives at the moment, based on current poll of polls, that's not enough for a majority. So this leaves us potentially with a fresh election, maybe with a new Prime Minister, as part of a coalition of parties opposed to Brexit. But Boris Johnson, as a well-known successful campaigner in the past, may have a little bit more optimism about his ability to sell the message of Brexit by October 31st if there is an election between now and then.
Simply incredible turn of events overnight there in the UK. Willem Marks, thank you very much. All right, also happening this morning, a developing story in the ongoing debate over gun safety and regulation, as a number of companies and retailers are now taking action to curb the sales of both guns and ammunition. Frank Collin joining us now with this story. Frank.
Hey, good morning, Brian. Walmart will stop selling ammunition for handguns and some assault rifles in its U.S. stores. The retailer will also stop selling handguns in Alaska, the only state where it does so, and is now asking its customers to stop openly carrying firearms, even in states where it's allowed by law. Walmart says the halt will take effect when it sells out of its current inventory. CEO Doug McMillon says the decision came after horrific events this summer, including mass shootings at Walmart stores in Texas and Mississippi. In a letter to employees, McMillon urges background checks be strengthened and call for a renewed debate on the new assault weapons ban. He says, "I'm a gun owner myself in a complex situation lacking a simple solution. We are trying to take constructive steps to reduce the risk that events like these will happen again. The status quo is unacceptable." Walmart, like Dick's Sporting Goods, had already ended sales of assault rifles and raised the age for gun purchases to 21 years old. It says the latest action will cut its share of the ammunition market from around 20% by more than half. Kroger, the largest U.S. supermarket chain, following Walmart's move, asking customers to stop openly carrying guns in stores. The NRA responding, saying Walmart's decision will not make Americans safer. Shares of gun makers, including Smith & Wesson parent company American Outdoor Brands, closing sharply lower yesterday. Brian, back over to you.
All right, Frank, we'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much. All right, when we come back, futures indicating the markets could gain back most of, if not all, of what they lost yesterday as Brexit, Hong Kong fears Trump a U.S. economy, plus the man you just saw there, not sure has anything to do with the stock market, but Roger Federer is going home. He is finished in Flushing. He gets sent back in a shocking upset. And later, why President Trump may want to tune into our trending topics today and possibly turn off his Twitter feed if he cares about the stock market. A really interesting study that talks about why when Trump tweets, stocks go haywire. And we've got it coming up. Stick around.
Moving from one rental home to another is so expensive.
Last time, we had to pay hundreds to move in, the first month's rent,
and then a big deposit.
With Romans, it doesn't have to be like this.
It doesn't.
At Romans, you really can move in from just £36, plus your first month's rent.
And that's it.
Nothing more to add. Move in from just £36, plus your first month's rent. With Romans.
No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
He's a pinball wizard. There has to be a twist. A pinball wizard's got some.
All right, welcome back and good morning. 513 here, 413 there in Chicago. All right, the big story sending futures higher this morning. Hong Kong's chief executive, Carrie Lam, says that she may permanently withdraw the planned extradition bill that sparked the protests. Dow Jones futures right now indicating an open of about 233. If that happens, we would gain back not quite all, but most of what we lost yesterday. But should the markets really be reacting this way to this news? Joining us now is Michael Tyler, Chief Investment Officer at Eastern Bank Wealth Management. And apparently, Michael, you've got to be an East Asia strategist, or at least a Hong Kong strategist, to understand the way the U.S. markets are reacting these days. Is that the way it should be for American stocks?
Well, I don't really see that there's a tremendous impact on the U.S. Either way. But having said that, political unrest is not good. And to the extent that Ms. Lam's ability to withdraw that bill helps calm markets and calm the economy in Hong Kong and in China, that would be very positive. And we'll see what happens. I don't think that's the major thing that's going to be driving markets. It hasn't affected markets on the downside. I don't think that in the U.S. it's going to have nearly as big an impact on the upside. I think the Brexit deal, I think some of the things going on in the U.S. are more likely affecting U.S. markets.
Well, we had the violent protests over the weekend. Stocks fell yesterday. I mean, the ISM number was out there as well. Now we have this. The Hang Seng's up 4%. But it sounds like you don't believe that there is that much of a direct tie. You think that maybe Brexit is more important than what's happening in China, or at least Hong Kong?
Well, the stuff happening in Hong Kong is important, but it's not going to affect the long-term movement of markets. So, yeah, they went down on Monday. They go on Tuesday, rather. They come back up on Wednesday. That's short-term moves, and where do you start? You're right where you left off before the weekend. But what happens in Britain, by contrast, there is a big deal, because if there is a hard Brexit and Britain's economy goes in the tank versus if there's some kind of a deal or if there's no Brexit at all, then Europe's economy, Britain's economy can come out very differently, and that does have an impact on the U.S.
Brexit, obviously all the stuff that, and I don't want you to become a UK political strategist as well, Michael, because if you can understand that, you're a better man, certainly than I am at least. Does the possibility of some kind of Brexit either delay or a permanent shelving, which is the way it looks like it's headed, should that help the U.S. markets longer term, or maybe just give us kind of a short-term adrenaline shot?
Well, I think the best possible outcome would be to eliminate Brexit completely, and for the UK to have another referendum and say, you know what, we've seen what it's going to look like, we don't like it, and we're back in the EU to stay. That would be an outcome that would send markets much higher, for the simple reason that then the existing trade rules, trade flows, population movement, all those good things would continue unfettered. But if that doesn't happen, if you get a hard Brexit with no deal, then okay, it's going to really hurt the UK economy. No question about it. It's going to make the pound much lower. Bank of England will have to inject a lot of liquidity. That will lead to some inflation, perhaps. It'll be painful in the short term, but the UK is resilient, and it will come through over time. The middle scenario is the challenging one of what happens if we just agree to another 6 months of negotiations, because the EU doesn't, frankly, have a whole lot of incentive to negotiate. Britain isn't as important to the UK. Britain isn't as important to Europe as Europe is to Britain, and that's the scenario that has a lot of CFOs and a lot of corporations worried because they don't know what the outcome is going to be. They can't plan effectively.
Are U.S. stocks undervalued or overvalued right now, Michael?
I think U.S. stocks look reasonably decent right now. I wouldn't say they're cheap, but look where bonds are by comparison, and there's more value in stocks than in bonds. Earnings growth is going to have some challenges. The second half of last year was very strong, as you may remember. So looking ahead, the next 6 months of earnings comparisons will be challenging, and that may keep the market, call it in place to maybe up a couple of few percent through the year end. But after that, assuming we can avoid a recession, I think the U.S. market looks pretty good.
Michael Tyler of Eastern Bank Wealth Management says the U.S. market looking pretty good. A little optimism on this Wednesday morning, Michael. Thank you. We appreciate it. All right, on deck. Is the recent IPO rush stalling out a bit? Details on one startup shelving plans to go public. Plus, the one stock playing a game of chicken with investors as its shares sink pre-market. Worldwide Exchange is back right after this.
Feel good car buying from findandfundmycar.com is the place where you can find quality used cars from trusted dealers rated by you, and where you can fund your car with finance to fit your budget. It's feel good car buying all in one place.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
At the Bank of Antandek, they're looking for a mascot.
We need an icon. Something that says high flying to all our mortgage customers.
Like a falcon or a stallion.
Or even better, a parrot. Check it out.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they're concentrating on helping customers find ways to take years off their mortgage with their overpayment calculator. See what's possible at Santander.
All applications are subject to status and our lending criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
All right, welcome back and good morning. Let's talk IPOs, because there are new reports that WeWork is planning to kick off its roadshow as soon as next week. At the same time, online consignment shop Poshmark, though, reportedly delaying plans for an IPO until at least next year. Instead, Poshmark may focus on boosting sales and improving its execution. No comment from either WeWork or Poshmark on these stories. Data storage, software, and chicken topping your stock stories right now. First up, data. Starboard Value Partners disclosing a more than 7% stake in Box. The hedge fund says shares of the cloud storage provider are simply undervalued, and it may talk to the company about exploring a sale. Also today, Tyson Foods. They're cutting their profit forecast for the year. Company citing short-term challenges including volatile commodity prices, food safety issues, and a fire at its beef plant in Kansas. You've also got record U.S. beef and chicken production has been pushing down prices, eating into Tyson's profit margins. And finally, if you own shares of Coupa Software, it really is a good morning. Shares are soaring today. Coupa's up more than 10%. The maker of payment software reporting better than expected revenue in the second quarter. Coupa on the move up. All right, still to come. An epic upset at last night's U.S. Open has one former tennis champ going home early. And later, missing out. Is the trade war with China actually sending more money and brains to that country? One investor says it is, and he'll tell you why on a story we haven't talked about. And that's coming up. Stick around.
Do you have
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your cash card. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
I'm getting strawberry notes and a flutter of sweetness without adding sugar. Clever. It is. Yazoo Kids uses a lactose-reduced milk that enhances flavour without adding sugar or artificial sweeteners. Milky deliciousness and packed full of goodness. Very clever. Strawberry Yazoo Kids supports change for life. Yazoo, shake it up! Contains naturally occurring sugars. Milk is a source of calcium, which is needed for the maintenance of normal bones.
No. No. No.
What are you doing?
I don't like any of our preset radio stations. We need a new car.
With the Jaguar E-Pace at $299 a month on personal contract hire, you'll find a reason.
That's better. And it's a Jaguar.
Initial rental £3,588. 48-month term. Subject to status. 8,000 miles per annum. Excess mileage and return conditions apply. No ownership option. Ends 30th of September. Participating retailers only. Jaguar contract hire.
All right, welcome back. It is 5:25 now, and time to get a check on your top world and national news stories, including the very latest on the dive boat tragedy off the coast of California. NBC's Francis Rivera in New York with that and more. Francis.
Hi, Brian. Good morning to you. Yeah, after that tragedy at sea, the search for answers has intensified in California following the devastating boat fire. Authorities are now saying that all 33 passengers and one crew member are presumed dead. 20 bodies have been recovered. The other 14 are still missing. Federal investigators are questioning the captain and surviving crew to try and pinpoint the cause of the deadly fire. The Pentagon is shifting billions of dollars in military money to fund Trump's border wall. Secretary of Defense Mike Esper authorized $3.6 billion to be used to fund 11 border wall projects. The shift causing a setback with the Defense Department as 127 projects get put on hold for President Trump's wall. Construction is set to begin in about 135 days. It has been 11 years since Roger Federer won the U.S. Open, but he'll have to wait until 2020 for another shot. He was upset in a thrilling 5-set quarterfinal match by Grigor Dimitrov. The only unseeded player left in the draw was 0 for 7 lifetime against Federer heading into the match. And Brian, those are your headlines.
Francis Rivera. Francis, thank you very much. All right, up next, Dorian heading for Florida and the Carolinas as thousands evacuate the coast of this still very powerful storm. The latest on its path and its timing coming up. Plus, futures are higher. But is there one red-hot sector that has been sending a big warning sign about what may be ahead? We're up 226, and we're back right after this.
Hiring was always a huge challenge.
At Romans, you can rent your next home from just £36, plus your first month's rent.
No deposit.
No problem.
Romans, your trusted local property experts at romans.co.uk. Conditions and monthly fee apply.
This meeting of the Losers Club has officially begun.
In 2 days, I dreamt of you. It all ends. I craved you. In London. I've missed you. Don't miss the final chapter.
We didn't stop it.
We can't let it happen again. Don't miss the end of It.
Hello?
It, Chapter 2. In cinemas Friday. Book tickets from your desktop. Rated 15.
At Tesco, we can pop our pasta in your Astra, our red Leicester in your Fiesta, or our mayo in your Mondeo. All you need to do is try click and collect. Just go to tesco.com, order your shopping, then click and collect. With the minimum basket spend now only £25. And if you fancy something a little more exotic, we can even put our pad thai in your Qashqai. Try click and collect at tesco.com. Every little helps. Selected larger stores. Booking charge may apply. See online for full terms and conditions.
Oh, I found one of our new Vauxhall Griffin editions.
Yes. What comes as standard?
Standard? Well, alloy wheels, sat-nav, aircon, DAB radio, Bluetooth, smartphone projection and USB connection.
Wow. Is that everything?
Sorry, forgot the colour touchscreen.
Buy a new Griffin edition, Adam, Astra, Corsa or Mocha X Plus and get a whole host of features as standard. The Griffin edition range. All Griffin, no bull. Visit your nearest retailer now. Vauxhall, British brand since 1903. Participating retailers only. Limited units while stocks last.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
For people who want to feel happier, stronger, fitter, get further, faster, better. For people who want to, but don't always manage to. It doesn't matter how you want to do it, who you want to do it with. It matters that you want to. Virgin Active. We'll find a way for you. Join in September and get 15% off each month on 12-month memberships. Visit virginactive.co.uk. Participating gyms. Terms and conditions apply.
Breaking news overnight. Hong Kong reportedly looking to officially withdraw that controversial extradition bill that sparked the protest months ago. Stocks there soaring overnight. A political drama in the UK. Rivals of Prime Minister Boris Johnson taking steps to block a no-deal Brexit. Add these stories together, and you've got green arrows around the world right now. Dow futures pointing to a more than 200-point jump at the open. Good Wednesday morning. It is September 4th. And you are watching Worldwide Exchange right here on CNBC. All right, welcome back, and thank you for being with us here on this Wednesday morning. Exactly 5:30 on the nose. Thanks for joining us. I'm Brian Sullivan. Here's how your money and investments look right now as we are halfway through the 5 a.m. hour in New York. Stock futures, they are much higher, up 223 points right now. And if we gain that, if we open up like this, we might gain back almost all of what we lost yesterday. Suddenly all those fears about a weaker manufacturing data point may be forgotten. Maybe not in the bond market, though, because benchmark 10-year yields still sitting under 1.5%. They're at 1.48 right now, the 2-year at 1.46. Here's what's moving markets. Breaking news out of Hong Kong. The city's embattled chief executive, Carrie Lam, reportedly planning to formally withdraw that controversial extradition bill as soon as tonight. A formal withdrawal of the bill is one of the major demands of pro-democracy protesters who have demonstrated against the government for almost 3 months. Stocks in Hong Kong soaring on that news, closing near session highs, up just under 4%. We will have more as this story develops throughout the day. Well, to Europe now, where stocks there are also gaining. Most of the major indexes are up more than 1%. All the attention is on the UK, where Prime Minister Boris Johnson gambled